Well, hey there, Kath Langman back with you for another episode of the Scale My Shopify Store podcast. Welcome to our new listeners. Welcome back to our long-term listeners. Always great to have you here with me. And so I've got an interesting topic to talk about with you today. I'm going to start by, I guess, just sharing a little bit about some of the business owners, e-commerce brand owners that I've been speaking with and working with in the last few weeks and months. I actually get to speak most days of the week. I get to speak with e-commerce brand owners about their business ambitions and really to help them design the strategies, the growth strategies that are going to help them to realize their vision and their goals. And the vision and the goals are so different for everybody, and it's endlessly fascinating and interesting for somebody like me. But some of them really want to put a rocket under their business and really scale it at the speed of light. Just started working with one such incredibly ambitious woman who is a lot of fun. And others have, more measured growth goals. Whatever is your vision and ambition for your business, it's got to be right for you, right? But without fail, it doesn't, regardless of what the goals are and how fast you want to grow, every business that I speak to, every business that I'm reviewing and that I get to work with, they all have areas where they're struggling, in particular with their marketing and their advertising, that really impact their ability to grow. And the reality is, if your marketing is inefficient or ineffective, it will also be unprofitable. So not only will you not be growing your business as quickly as you'd like, you'll also be heading towards a cash flow crunch that is never much fun. I'm sure that, there's probably no single business owner that's never experienced that kind of a situation, because there are certainly some things that we all have to go through as a business owner that are unpredictable and that, you can't foresee. Pandemics, for example, but you don't want to engineer that because of mistakes with your marketing and advertising, because that could just kill your business entirely. I mean, similarly, if your operations and your fulfillment are inefficient or ineffective, then that can also act as a handbrake on your marketing and your growth strategies, so that it actually ends up slowing down your growth as well. But this kind of a situation where there are inefficiencies and ineffective strategies in place to grow your business is so common, and it can actually happen to businesses at any stage of their maturity. So whether it's early stage businesses to much more mature businesses that have been around for a long time. So for example, last year, we started working with a really beautiful fashion accessories brand that has been around for a couple of decades. Like many e-commerce businesses, they really surged ahead, taking massive leaps and growing in massive leaps and bounds during 2020 to 2022, when, that annoying coronavirus forced most of the population to shop online. But, as I'm sure you all know, that level of demand for shopping online, it was a little bit of unnatural demand, and it did taper off with the end to lockdowns and, when everybody could head back to physical stores again. And of course, e-commerce shopping is still here. It actually is still growing year on year. It's just, the peak of that kind of online shopping, the peak demand period, it really did taper off from that period of time. We don't need to go into all of that right now. But then what happened last year in 2023 was that everyone had to start getting a lot more skilled with their marketing to actually, engineer and create the awareness of their brand and the demand for your brand and for your products. Also, when it comes to getting more skilled with the marketing, it also, was kind of thrust on us. This need to become more skilled was thrust on us by these massive changes to the marketing and advertising platforms that we all use. So this is where so many brands have struggled, right? And our client was no exception. Their marketing became increasingly inefficient and ineffective, and they were struggling to attract and convert new customers, and their return on ad spend really diminished, and they were just kind of limping along, surviving off their repeat customers. And the reality was that they were doing what they had always done in the past with their marketing and their advertising, and it stopped working, partly because throughout that kind of acute COVID pandemic time, none of us had to try that very hard to actually get eyeballs onto our website, just because everybody was online all the time. But secondly, the way that these platforms work, and the new kind of privacy and security restrictions, and the upshot of AI being built into all of these platform algorithms now, so much has changed in such a short space of time that what used to work with marketing and advertising just does not work anymore. And so, brands like this one and others as well that have been around for a much shorter period of time, they were really, really struggling, and their returns were just sliding backwards. Similarly, another client of ours who also started with us last year, much newer business, only been around about 18 months by the time she started working with us, this time in the supplement space. And she came to us because she knew that their marketing was not producing sustainable results. She knew that they were overspending on ads for the returns that they were getting. She also knew, though, that her brand and her products have incredible potential, because they actually operate in a niche that is very topical and very in demand right now. And so, she just knew that the way that they were marketing and advertising was inefficient and ineffective and costing too much, but that there was this, massive opportunity to rectify that and, start moving in a more profitable direction. Another client of ours as well, who has a baby brand, and this one's super common, this kind of scenario. So not been going for that long, maybe about 3 to 5 years from memory, but before working with us, she was only spending a few dollars a day on her Meta ads and about the same on Google. So really small budget. And unfortunately, the budget was just too small for these platforms to do much with. So the ads just never passed out of their learning phase. They never managed to optimize properly at all. Her website was never getting enough traffic for her to get any meaningful data there either. So the conversion rate was pretty rubbish. Just ultimately there was just not enough volume to get any meaningful results. And like at the end of the day, when you think about market research as an example, I'm sure none of us would want to take any kind of new medication that had, only been tested and tried on 5 people, because that's not meaningful data, right? You just cannot make decisions based on that. And, we do need to think along similar lines with digital marketing. So ultimately, in this case, her traffic and sales were costing so much more than they needed to. And it was simply because there just wasn't enough data for either the ads to pass through learning and to optimize, or for her website to get enough traffic to be able to convert. And, when there's just such a small amount of data there, you can't make any decisions either about optimizing your website, because there's, the sample size is too small. So anyway, in today's episode, I am going to try and enlighten you about the reasons that lead to these different scenarios happening. And I'm going to share some details around how to overcome them and how to get your brand back to profitable growth. But before we get into it, I really want to give you one last shout out to grab a free copy of my 2024 e-commerce marketing playbook. So this is a really comprehensive resource in which I have detailed the most recent trends in digital marketing for e-commerce businesses specifically, and what's working right now to generate the best results. I will be pulling this playbook down at the end of January, which is not very far away now. So if you have not yet grabbed a copy for yourself, get it now by heading over to catherinelangman.com/playbook, and we will include the link to that in the show notes for this episode. Alrighty, let us dig into the meat and potatoes of today's episode, which is the critical scaling error that brands make that absolutely kills profits and what you should do about it. So, what is this critical error? You might be, thinking and worrying about that a little bit right now. I have strung you along a little bit. I won't keep you in a state of suspense any longer. So the issue is this. Brands often miscalculate how much they can and should spend on advertising in order to acquire a new customer. Now, I don't like kind of talking jargon, so I'll give you a definition here. So, what is customer acquisition cost? This is a metric that you do need to get your head around if you really want to scale successfully in the e-commerce business model. Well, any business model, really. So customer acquisition cost, which we will paraphrase as CAC, CAC, basically it's the amount of money that you spend as a business owner in order to get a customer to purchase your products or services. So customer acquisition cost, CAC, it's, basically it's a really important growth metric for businesses to essentially determine customer profitability and also sales efficiency. So without knowing this metric in your business and having, realistically having a target that you can aim for and optimize towards, then you're going to always be guessing and you'll always be in that position where you don't understand how much that you can and should spend on your ads. You won't understand how effective your ads are or how effective they could be. Ultimately, we really need to be able to understand these numbers. And brands, I find, miscalculate this in two ways, or rather, they actually don't calculate it at all, and they make one of the following two errors as a result. Either they overspend on advertising in an effort to scale and grow really rapidly, or they underspend on advertising in order to, or probably more actually a fear of running out of money. So, they don't want to run out of money. And so that fear exists there, so they just don't spend enough on advertising. But either way, they actually end up in a cash flow crunch because spending too little means you don't grow your revenue quickly enough to actually make a profit over and above your fixed expenses. Of course, in the early days of a business, it's pretty normal to be, and to be expected that you need to invest money in your business to cover those fixed expenses and, probably the first few initial production costs or buying your stock in. But if you don't grow quickly enough, you will forever need to be putting more money back into your business to cover those expenses because your revenue just won't be increasing sufficiently to fund the operation of your business, let alone fund growing it, right? But on the flip side, people overspend in a couple of ways. Number one, they just have really bad ads running, whether it's, poor or incorrect setup, or their ad creatives aren't appealing to the right customers, or, various, there'd be variations on the theme there. But either way, the ads will end up costing too much. So, you just end up converting new customers at a price that is just too expensive to be profitable. Or number two, they spend a lot and scale too quickly, and then they run out of inventory too quickly. And this happens a bit, so misjudging the lead time to manufacture or source more inventory in order to keep, going at the pace that they're going. And so they end up having to stop and start their ads due to this scenario. And that is just not ideal because what happens is it interrupts the algorithm's ability to optimize and scale high converting and profitable ads. And every time you have to restart your ads again from scratch, you just have to go through that learning phase again. And it's just never going to be as efficient or as cost effective as campaigns that have already optimized. Obviously, it happens sometimes and you just deal with it. But, the idea is that if that happens, you learn from that and you just get, better at pacing your ad spend, at pacing your growth rate so that you can, always remain in stock as well. But, aside from that, if your inventory is selling through that quickly, why would you keep spending money on ads to sell it? Because it's probably not necessary to that extent. And obviously, if you can sell through without spending on money on ads, then you're going to, at the same pace. I don't want you to go back into that first mistake situation where you're not spending anything or not spending enough, and then not covering your fixed overheads. Obviously, we don't want to go back to that. But, if you're selling through at a good rate and you are going to run out of your product before you have, your next production run delivered, then, don't spend money on ads unnecessarily, because that's profit you could pocket. So sometimes, you can just rely on the organic sources and the email marketing and all of that kind of stuff when you're in that scenario. But, bottom line is, like, anytime these sorts of situations occur, you've got to learn from them. I mean, I was reading an article this morning. It was completely unrelated to business. It was about this program that works with teenage kids in Australia to train them up and then take them to do the Kokoda track walk. And and these are, kids that perhaps don't come from, particularly advantaged backgrounds. And so, this is a really, really big opportunity, but also challenge for them. I'm sure walking the Kokoda track is a challenge for anybody who does it. But there was this one mentor in that program who went blind as a teenager, and then, obviously had that challenging experience to go through, but managed to come through and, get his life back together and on track, and decided he was just going to find a way to continue to achieve the things he wanted to do in life. And one of those things was walking the Kokoda track. And one of the kids in this program said, well, didn't you stack it all the time? Weren't you falling over all the time? And this mentor's answer was just so enlightening. And he said something like, there's no medals or prizes for not falling over. And, at the end of the day, like, that's how we learn, isn't it? So, making a few mistakes in business, trying things and things not working out, there's no prizes or medals as a business owner if you get to the finish line never having made a mistake before. So we don't want to be afraid of trying things and making errors, but we do need to just learn from them, I guess, is the moral of that story. Anyway, back to the topic at hand here. I guess hopefully you can figure out here that the first thing that you need to do is to be able to work out what that ideal CAC metric is, your cost per customer acquisition. And I just want to take a small diversion, not storytelling, but, related here, where I want to mention that your pricing is incredibly important here. Your pricing and the margins that you have on your products is incredibly important here, because, and I do want to mention this because I do meet a lot of business owners who have priced their products too low. They do not have enough gross profit margin between their landed cost to produce a unit and their retail price. So I actually do have an entire podcast episode around that dives into pricing and other kind of profitable cash flow related topics. So I might actually, what was it called? How to Become a Cash Flow Queen, I think was the title of it. But I'll include the link to that episode in this episode. So if you've not listened to that and you're maybe worried that maybe your margins, your pricing is not where it should be, and that you don't have enough profit margin in order to really operate your business properly. So that's definitely a good episode to go and listen to and just really take a good solid look at your pricing. Different sorts of products, different sorts of industries will have different pricing models. Some products, because they are a constant repeat purchase type item, they can operate on smaller margins. But at the end of the day, if you are wanting to sell direct to consumer via an e-commerce website, you do need to have enough margin in order to A, be able to cover your fixed expenses, B, pay yourself, and C, spend money, a realistic amount of money on your advertising and your marketing in order to grow. Because without being able to spend money on those things, nobody's going to find out about your business, about your brand, and you'll just kind of go nowhere. So, the first step really has to be figuring out and calculating what that realistic cost per acquisition needs to be. So you need to be able to have a portion of your average order value that goes towards acquiring a customer. So that's the CAC. Obviously, you're going to have a portion of that average order value that covers the actual goods themselves, the manufacturing. Portion of it's got to go towards fixed overheads, and then hopefully you've got some profit left at the end of the day as well. That's the ideal scenario. This is a whole topic that I was discussing in our academy coaching group a couple of weeks ago, and we sat there together and I was showing them how to work on their profit and loss projections to figure out, what those target percentages are for their business so that they can actually see how they're going to make money at the end of the day, right? So we need to work out what this realistic cost per acquisition is. So obviously, there is no point going in with pricing and profit margins that only allow for a really, really, really small cost per acquisition, because that's actually just not going to be realistic for the ad platforms. At the end of the day, and you can Google this, there will be kind of average acquisition, cost per acquisition or cost per purchase if you're, looking at meta ads for an e-commerce business. There's going to be averages for your sort of product and your industry. And you can't go, okay, well, that's the average, but I can only afford 1/10 of that. So that's my customer acquisition cost. And it's like, well, that's unrealistic because the ad platforms don't give two hoots what you want. It's like, the way these algorithms work and these platforms work is that, there is a finite inventory of ad space and there is millions of advertisers who are vying for that ad space. There are billions of users, viewers, us, you and me, who go on and we have our Instagram account and we go on TikTok and Facebook and we spend time just consuming the content. If we're not interested in the content in the ads, we won't look at them, and therefore those ads will cost those advertisers more. Equally, if there are lots of advertisers wanting to get their ads in front of the same people, then that drives ad costs up. So, you need to ultimately work within the reality of the situation here is what I'm saying. So this is where profit margins, realistic cost per acquisition, and, operating in the realms of reality all come in. And so figuring out what that target cost per acquisition is, but then also I like to think about what your lifetime value of your customer is. And you could even go so far as to calculate the lifetime gross profit. So, lifetime value is, from a revenue perspective, top line revenue, how much does one customer spend with you for the lifetime that they purchase with you? Hopefully it goes without saying that if you sell the sort of product that customers are going to buy 4 times a year, then that's going to be easier to make more money from that customer than if you sell a product that people buy once. So, if you think about the different types of product where, some products are a one-time purchase, some products might be once a year purchase, some products, if you are a coffee or a tea drinker and you drink coffee and tea every month, you might want to have that delivered every month or every 6 weeks or something. I'm pretty sure my who gives a crap toilet paper delivery comes every 6 weeks. But, so what's that buying frequency? How much is that customer going to be worth to your business over a year, over 2 years, 3 years? So that, again, you might take that into consideration a little bit with the amount you're willing to spend for your CAC, your cost per acquisition. Hopefully it also goes without saying that if you are a one-time purchase, you need to be more profitable off that purchase and have a lower CAC versus a brand where, maybe the customers are likely to purchase every 3 months, for example. So, but even still, if you want to be profitable enough with your CAC, your customer acquisition cost, if you want to be profitable enough from that first purchase to be able to scale your ads up and scale your revenue up more quickly, then having that profitable CAC right off the first purchase is going to give you the cash flow to keep spending more on money and keep scaling those ads. Versus, for example, a brand like Netflix that makes a loss on the first sale. In fact, I think they make a loss on more than the first month of their subscription. They're obviously a subscription model, but they make a loss initially and they wait, they know how many, what the lifetime value of their customers are, and they have to wait for several of those repeat subscription payments or purchases to come in order to make a profit. So if you and honestly, like if you have investors, if you have a much bigger pot of money to fund your ads to scale a business, then you can be more aggressive and grow in that means. You need to be really all over those metrics like a rash, as us Aussies might say. So you can be proceeding with confidence with spending that kind of money to scale more aggressively. But if not, if you're like most business owners that I know, where you have to self-fund and you need to get your business as quickly as possible to a point where it can fund its own growth, you have to be profitable off that first CAC. And then, obviously the profit, the longer term profits come in from the repeat purchases. So to grow that lifetime lifetime gross profit, if I can, I'm tripping over my own words today, to grow that lifetime gross profit or that lifetime value, it means increasing the number and velocity, the number of repeat purchases and the velocity to repeat purchase. So, taking somebody from a once a year order to once every 6 months, and then from once every 6 months to once every 3 months, obviously that customer is spending a lot more money with you in that period of time than they were at the beginning. So, that's going to add the upward trajectory to, take your growth line to a more exponential growth line versus an incremental growth line. So how do you go about, getting your ads to that really profitable stage where you are operating your advertising within that profitable CAC metric? It might be, a target kind of metric bandwidth, how do you get to that stage where you are operating profitably with your ads and you can scale, you can fund your growth from the profits of that first sale? So the first step that you need to really go through is to start by just killing off all of your unprofitable new customer acquisition ads. Might be more than ads as well. For example, I know in my first business, I was advertising online, I was advertising in print, I was also advertising and had stands at expos and trade shows. And I used to track everything. As you can, if you've listened to more than 10 minutes of this podcast, you probably get the picture that I am really big on understanding the data. And so I was able to track, which of those customer acquisition channels were actually really the most profitable. And so the idea is that you kill off anything that's not profitable. So if I relate this back to the first client example that I mentioned earlier in this episode, the fashion accessories brand, they were running some extremely unprofitable ads, and so basically we just killed those off. We kept the ones that were working, but the ones that weren't working, we killed those off. And the result is that the ad spend goes way down, but the new customer revenue doesn't really move. And so in that particular business, they've got an amazing warm audience that are of repeat customers. And so, which everybody wants, by the way. So that, that's a win. That's a really amazing achievement for that particular business. But you don't need to spend money on as much money on ads to get those repeat purchases coming in. So immediately, that business became more profitable. But the next step is to institute cost controls. And, obviously part of this is understanding and calculating what that CAC metric needs to be, or the target, the goal metric is. Then, you can use some of the automated functions for your, like controlling your spend in your ad account. Obviously, you need to be monitoring these things like a hawk as well, and just be really sticking to those budgets and making sure that you are operating within that target bandwidth for how much you're going to spend on your ads to acquire new customers. And so what happens then, because you are not overspending by big margins like you might have been before, then your new customer customer acquisition cost, the margin on that, it's no longer destroying your overall profitability in the business. And you have enough left over, enough profit from each new customer acquisition or first purchase from a new customer to be able to fund operating the business and continue to grow the business. The third step that we always go through is implementing conversion rate optimization strategies. I would say out of everyone that I've worked with over the last year, more so than historically, but more and more as time goes by, and the landscape that we do business in online becomes more and more competitive. Everybody needs to be working on optimizing for conversion rate. And so, essentially we're doing things, on the website largely, but certainly also across all of the marketing and advertising channels to be able to improve the conversion rate. And so the result of those efforts is a significant lift in conversions from all traffic sources, but including from paid traffic, and therefore increasing your return on investment and decreasing your cost per acquisition. And it's so cool when you see the impact of those efforts coming in. It's not necessarily something that's like an instant result that, you make a change and then the next second you can see the difference, but it doesn't take very long for the evidence to start coming in. And it's really, really cool when that happens. And then the fourth step is to really rebuild healthy ad spend. And to do this these days really requires rigorous creative execution. So last week on the show, I was talking all about having using the creative elements of your marketing. So the visuals, the words, having a systematic approach to, essentially designing, developing, producing more creative content to use in your marketing and your advertising more frequently. And just, so we have iterations, we have different hooks, different angles, different different messaging. There's always, like, throughout the year, there's always different reasons why customers might buy your sort of product. And so being really rigorous, really systematic about creating and executing on that is going to really help your ability to scale your ad spend and acquire new customers at a profit. And so by being able to do that and to implement that kind of a systematic approach means that you can actually spend more money on your ads and do so profitably. So your new customer revenue goes up, you're acquiring new customers, but also your total profit margin goes way up as well. So that's the gold standard. When you end up in that situation, then you do end up with the cash flow and the profitability to continue to grow. So that's the process that you need to go through in order to be able to Fund and scale a e-commerce brand profitably, particularly when you are spending money on ads, on digital advertising and other digital marketing strategies. And just know that it will always be an iterative approach where you cycle through those steps over and over again. Just as the market that we all operate in is ever changing, and we need to react and respond to that market by revising our marketing in order to ultimately we want our customers to resonate with the content that we're sharing with them, whether that's organic content or paid content. It doesn't matter. If we want our audience to resonate with it, then we do need to react and respond to what is going on in the marketplace and in the world that we operate in and live in. So hence the need to just have that iterative approach. Now, you might be wondering at this point how on earth you can implement this in your business. So, from figuring out what those target metrics are to, figuring out how to, design the right kind of ad strategy, the right kind of content for your ads, the right kind of strategies for, conversion rate optimization and all of the rest of it. Now, generally, there's always going to be a knowledge gap when it comes to mastering new or different ways of doing things. And that, of course, includes your marketing and your advertising in your business. And whenever you have to master new skills, there's always 3 options available to you. So, you can figure it out yourself by trial and error. You can pay to learn from someone, or you can outsource it or delegate it. And if you do want to accelerate learning and implementing this stuff in your business so that you can scale and grow faster, then I would love to invite you to work with me. So the first step, if you are curious about that and curious to discover if that, it would be a good fit for you and I to work together, is to take advantage of one of our free e-commerce strategy sessions. And you are welcome to book that today by going to productpreneurmarketing.com/let's-talk. I will, of course, include the link to that on the show notes page for this episode. But I certainly hope that a few of you will, just be at that right stage of your business where you are ready to scale and grow, and you are looking to achieve some really big goals this year and get a little bit of help along the way. So if that's you, then go ahead and book that free strategy session with our team. And that's all I have for you today. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Hopefully it's been not too metric and techie heavy, and it's given you a bit of new knowledge, bit of inspiration, and also just a little bit of guidance about where you should be focusing your your money and your efforts in order to grow profitably this year. So I hope you've enjoyed that. I look forward to being on the show again with you next week. Bye for now.